and welcome to the last video of this chapter. Learning Objective 6, explain how intrinsic motivation, extrinsic incentives, and cognitive biases affect employee behavior. Leaders must be able to unite the behaviors of employees around two common themes: pursuing strategic goals and making optimal decisions for the company. Therefore, intrinsic motivation, extrinsic incentives, and cognitive biases need to be understood, including how they influence human behavior. Intrinsic motivation is motivation that comes from within us. It is what is powered, if there's no extrinsic motivation, incentives, intrinsically, like how do you show up? Why do you want to be there? What effort are you going to put forward? And that comes from within the person. Not in the scope of this course, but definitely in some psychology courses that I took. We cannot make somebody motivated. That is, motivation comes from within. However, what we can do is under that second item, we can, as organizations, provide extrinsic, so external, external or extrinsic incentives to align the employee's motivation with that of the company's. It's a way to highlight important goals and to incentivize employees to achieve those corporate goals by offering them sometimes some type of reward. So oftentimes this is financial. If you are an employee, so when I was in uni, I was a server or waitress at Red Lobster, and I got paid an hourly rate, hourly wage, as well as tips. And we got to keep all of our tips minus 1% of our ring out that went to the bar, which was like relatively low, all things considered. So I was motivated to show up and to provide the best service for my customers because of tips and because of my wage. However, I was also intrinsically motivated because growing up, I didn't get to go out to eat like a ton. And I hardly ever went out to some place like Red Lobster. So if we did go out to a place like Red Lobster, and I get it, people, but it was definitely like a special occasion. And, I know that people are spending a lot of money and that they deserve to have a good time. So I was intrinsically motivated to help provide that experience, do what I could. So yes, I was incentivized by tips, but I was also intrinsically motivated based on how I was raised. Now, cognitive biases. So we all have biases, and when people say I don't have any, that means that, oh goodness, maybe they're just not aware of them yet. So, for example, when I applied for research funding, I went through cognitive bias training, and it just highlights that awareness is a good way to combat. Being aware that we could be biased through the lens of how we were raised, as well as interactions that we've had, inherently as we are who we are today, that influence how we may show up and how the lens through which we interpret our surroundings, our events, interactions. And so awareness helps counteract. Same with processes, same with acknowledging that we could be affected by these cognitive biases. It might even just be so simple as when provided with 3 choices, we tend to go with the first one. With learning, one of the reasons why I make these mini lecture videos as mini lectures and not like one big long one is because our brain is biased to remember the stuff at the beginning and the stuff at the end of videos. So if we make the videos relatively short, that means that students don't have to work really, really hard to remember the stuff in the middle because relatively speaking, to 160 minutes, our videos are short to kind of work within our cognitive biases to remember things at the beginning, beginning, primacy, and the end, recency events. All right, so my question to you is, what is the difference between intrinsic motivation and extrinsic incentives, or intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. And what is an example that you have found in your own life that makes you intrinsically motivated versus if somebody wants you to do something, it has to be with that external incentive. So take a moment and let me know what you think. All right. Well, I'm interested to hear what you have to say, so please do post it below in the comments or on discussion board. For myself, this is so frustrating to admit, but as somebody who played a lot of team sports, including competitive fast pitch and competitive rugby, early on in my teens and my 20s, now later in life, I find it really difficult to motivate myself to work out by myself. So what do? I go to group fitness classes, CrossFit classes, and yoga studios, because I really find that social presence, that motivation of others, that extrinsic kind of incentive of being in a group and not wanting to perform less than the group, that motivates me to really try my hardest and really get the most out of the workout. Now, I wish I could say I was intrinsically motivated by, health and lifestyle and fitness, and theoretically, intuitively, I am. I want a nice long health span. I want to help prevent further injury. I want to help, feel good, look good, do good. And yet in the moment, it takes a lot more for me to hype myself up to go for a 30-minute run on the treadmill downstairs in the middle of winter than it does for me to go to a group fitness class where I get to see my favorite instructors, perform, just do flow yoga in a group of people. It's just one of those things. So if you're anything like me, there might be some things that you would prefer to do with some extrinsic incentives or motivation versus internally. And yet other people, you might have things that you're no, of course, very intrinsically motivated for a number of things, but yet maybe sitting down to study is something that is not yet intrinsically motivating. It'll be good for you, when you should do it, how you should do it, and yet maybe a study group is a good social presence way to have those incentives. And then maybe you go for coffee, or, you start off with a little chit chat, you end with a little chit chat, and it just feels more enjoyable. So understanding and then making mechanisms for you to help work within your internal motivation and external incentives. And understand that corporations are doing the same thing, and managers in the corporation are doing something similar. And typically it has to do with a mix of financial and non-financial items as far as extrinsic incentives go. It's why back in the day you heard Google provided all their food, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, coffee stations, ping pong. They wanted to really give their employees no reason to leave, and therefore work harder, stay at work harder, enjoy the culture, and they would get a stronger product from their employees that way. Okay. So thank you so much for being with me this entire chapter. I just have one last chapter summary before we end. And so as this is the last slide of the last mini lecture video, we will always have an end of chapter summary. And this one has to do with big picture managerial accounting. Managerial accounting assists managers in carrying out their responsibilities, which includes planning, directing, motivating, controlling, and decision-making. Managerial accounting differs from financial accounting in that it focuses on the future. It emphasizes relevant data, places less emphasis on precision, and more emphasis on the different segments of an organization, is not governed by GAAP, so not governed by an IFRS or ASPE in Canada, and produces reports and analysis that are not mandatory, but help to inform internal decision makers, guide to the organization to help those internal decision makers accomplish the strategy of the corporation. Enterprise risk management involves proactively identifying and managing key business risks faced by an organization. CPA Canada, more specifically, each of the provincial bodies have their own code of professional ethics, own code of professional conduct that provide guidance for members regardless of their place of employment. And many companies have embraced corporate social responsibility, CSR, whereby the needs of various stakeholders are considered when making decisions. Lastly, it is important for management accountants to understand how human behavior is influenced by intrinsic motivation, extrinsic incentives, and cognitive biases. Okay, that's it for the content. A friendly reminder to complete the practice problems and attend your tutorial. And now you don't need to complete all the practice problems at once. They do get progressively harder the higher the number they are. So sprinkle them in, some before the tutorial, some after, some before your quiz and term test. Please do complete the SmartBook pre-work assignments. It's typically due before lectures, but this week, and this week only, because it is the first week of classes, it'll be due next Monday. So it'll be due at the same time as Chapter 2. Awesome work, everyone. Welcome to Introductory Management Accounting. Welcome to the end of your week 1 mini lecture videos. Welcome to your winter semester, and I'm really looking forward to working with you this term. I'll talk to you soon.